Across the world, haunted places are a commonly established setting of an above-average number of so-called paranormal sightings. For example, the Hoya Forest in Transylvania, the Skinwalker Ranch in Idaho, or Chestnut Ridge in Pennsylvania. Well, for some reason, I've heard many strange stories from a city in Hungary, namely Érd, and its surroundings. Whether it's because I know a lot of people there, or because the place has something unusual about it, I don't know. Now I'll tell you some of these stories in a way locals have told me. The Yeti. Approximately 25 to 30 years ago, late in the evening, a young man was chatting with his friends on the outskirts of Dwarf, a town next to Érd, on the border of a nearby woodland and residential area. One of them spotted an enormous human-like furry creature. He described the creature as a muscular Chewbacca with long hair. He said the creature was so tall that it could step over a regular yard fence without a problem. He was overcome by powerful fear when he saw the creature and felt that he must not tell his friends or he would be in trouble. He said he couldn't even see the creature's face because he was so afraid. He didn't dare look at it. When the creature moved on, it was only then that he dared to ask his friends if they had seen it too, but they replied that they had seen nothing. The witness didn't know what a Bigfoot Sasquatch was, so I showed him the Patterson-Gimlin film, but he said what he saw had much longer fur and hair. A couple of months ago, a Hungarian YouTuber named Paxel posted a video about a large, monkey-human-like cryptid, often seen in Hungary. In the comments, I found two that might support this story. The first one was written by a user named Vonyish, and I quote, "When I was a kid, my father showed me some big footprints in the semi-wooded terrain between Érd and Soskut, about a half a meter long. He said that these were the footprints of the giants here. And I said even then that someone was having fun digging footprint holes. He said that these were the footprints of the giants here. And I said even then that someone was having fun and digging footprint holes here and there." I think the humor factor was not missing in these topics in the past either. If it had been 60-70 footprints, I would have wondered maybe, but the half-meter to meter footprints seemed more like a masterpiece. But I followed it all the way. Left foot, right foot. They started abruptly and ended abruptly. I'm not a geologist. I don't know how much weight it takes to push the soil back and forth and how long it takes to weed out nature. The second comment comes from a user named Ghoul. "Hi Paxel, I had a similar incident back in September 2020. Some friends and I went to Funduklia Valley. We were walking a lot and started to hear cracking noises. I went to investigate, but the others didn't dare. As I went further into the woods, I saw a monkey-like walking bipedal dark furry thing. I started to run. The others started to run. Then I returned to the same place after 5 minutes, and nobody was there." That was my story. Red eyes in the windows. On a rainy evening in 2011, we're in a house in Érd. Two boys around 10 years old were watching TV in their room. The light from their lamps filtered through the darkness outside. Suddenly, they heard a knock on the window. One boy looked at the window next to him and saw nothing. He turned back to the window behind him and cried out, then hid under his blanket. His friend laughed and asked, "Are you afraid of the rain?" The boy responded by pointing to the black window from under the blanket. When his friend looked up, two red eyes stared at him from the window. The other boy also cried out and hid under the blanket. The figure disappeared from the window after they came out from under the blanket 10 minutes later. Apart from the glowing red eyes, this phenomenon was even more peculiar. Judging by the height where the eyes peered into the room, the creature must have been at least 220 centimeters tall. When they told me this story, I told them about the Yeti sighting mentioned earlier. Perhaps that's what they may have seen. They replied that they didn't think so because the creature had a thinning sandhole-shaped neck, and it didn't resemble the creature seen in the Peterson-Gimlin film. Nevertheless, the creature had a humanoid face, deep eye sockets, long hair, and thick hands. After that incident, red eyes were seen peering through the windows of the house at night at least 100 more times over the next year and a half until the phenomenon stopped in early 2013. The two boys told me that there were situations where they saw more than one luminous eye. One of them dreamt that they were being watched from their window, and when they woke up, there was an eye in the window. One morning, they even found a large handprint on a window that was located on a higher side of the house. The Stalker. A friend of mine has repeatedly dreamt that a bald man with a briefcase and very strange features, wearing a baggy suit, was following and watching him. His dream came true the next day when he noticed the strange-looking man watching him while walking through Erd. After that, my friend noticed the strange vulture man several times in his dream and saw him several times in the street. On one occasion, my friend saw the strange man and started to walk toward him as the man turned and went around the corner. My friend chased him down, but when he turned the corner, no one was in the street, even though my friend should have seen him. The strange man simply disappeared without a trace. The Dwarf. One autumn night in the late 1990s, a local woman was sitting at home and noticed the dog outside howling and barking unusually. After several minutes of the dog not stopping, she decided to go outside and see what was happening. When she got out into the yard, she saw the dog staring at a dark, human-like furry figure about 1 meter tall, almost as wide as he was tall, from about 1 meter in the yard. Due to the darkness, she couldn't determine the creature's features. She watched it for a short while and then ran back into the house. She sent her husband out a few minutes later. By then, the strange creature was gone. The Saucer. The following incident happened in 1982 or 1983. One evening, a group of young boys was cycling along Wild Goose Street when they noticed a bright object streaking across the sky and then stopped. The boys witnessed a brightly lit object land at the intersections of Wild Goose and Swan Streets, where a green courtyard now stands, so they headed in that direction. When they got close, they saw a typical flying saucer-like craft in the lot. Two of the boys in the group were brave enough to get up close to the vehicle. The witness said that when he and his friend approached the saucer, they saw 4 yellow windows on the side with figures moving behind them. At this point, he and his friend began encouraging one another to approach the saucer and touch it. But at this point, the saucer began to float, then took off into the sky and vanished. The Mercury Tree. I spoke to a local man who saw a very strange phenomenon on the White House Road in broad daylight around 2010-2011. He said that while standing in the yard of his house, he noticed 2 unusual shapes floating through the sky at about 30 meters high. According to the witness, the 2 objects were about 1 meter high and appeared as if someone had hung 2 Mercury tree roots from the sky. The objects or creatures were moving and looked like they were liquid, and their tentacles were creeping back and forth in the air. The witness claimed to have watched the phenomenon for minutes until they floated away behind nearby houses. Death. On a summer afternoon in 2017, a 14-year-old boy was spending his free time on a playground between Dwarf and Erd when 2 older boys came up to him and tied him up. The older boys beat the poor boy mercilessly until his head cracked and he died. According to the boy's account, he was not alone when he found himself in a dark space. A figure stood alongside him, about 2 meters tall, with a long black cloak and hood, several arms, and a rotting face. There were 3 doors behind him, one black, one white, and one with light coming from it. The creature presented itself simply as death and then told the boy he had a choice. Each of the 3 doors led to a different place, and he could enter through any of them. The black door leads to darkness. The white door takes him back to the life he has lived. And finally, the light door leads to heaven. However, the figure advised him to enter through the white door because the boy still had work to complete in his life. When the boy woke up, the 2 older boys were in front of him, and they were frightened that they would get in trouble. The young boy suddenly felt he had a lot of energy, so he got up and ran away. His parents took him straight to the hospital, where doctors said he had suffered an injury so serious that he needed surgery. But the boy recovered so quickly that surgery was not necessary. As for his attackers, they got away with it because the Hungarian police did nothing about it, as usual. The Smiling. I heard a story about a house haunted by a demonic entity. The guy who told me the story said that as a child he had seen an entity in the house several times. Several times he heard footsteps coming from the nearby rooms, but when he looked to see what was causing this noise, he couldn't find anything. He saw shadows from the corner of his eye, but they were gone when he looked in that direction. Another time, something turned the light in the hallway on and off, but when he went outside to turn it off, no one was there. One time he walked downstairs and found himself face to face with a creature waiting for him at the bottom of the stairs. The creature was 2 meters tall, thin, and gray, with a wide mouth full of teeth and very long fingernails. The guy said it ran into his room and refused to come out for hours. The guy also said that the creature scared him by making him look through his window and stare at him with a terrifying smile. I have heard many more stories from the city of Erd and its surrounding, but I don't want the video to be any longer. As always, if you have any strange stories or just want to ask questions, write to the email address in the description.